wait to get back home and kiss my bidet. Oh no. Oh no.
Looks like I broke the lock on the door again. Well, enough regular dumping. I guess it's time for some info dumping. Want to hear all about a video game I've been playing?
No, not really.
Avowed is the latest effort from Obsidian, the cherished makers of medieval murder mysteries and epic RPGs that emphasize player choice and deep storytelling. Oh, and the New Vegas thing.
Nobody's dick's that long. Not even Long Dick Johnson, and he had a fucking long dick.
On a surface level, Avowed might share some similarities to the Elder Scrolls games. It's a first-person action RPG set in a fantasy world after all, but as a wise man once said, comparison is the death of joy. And after spending a solid 60-hour work week in this vibrant land, I can definitely say it does plenty to set itself apart, for better and for worse.
Oh yeah, that did look kind of neat.
Yeah, you wouldn't know by flipping through this wall of reviews, though. Most seem to lean on Skyrim as a measuring stick, only played through the game's opening hours, or clickbaited viewers with an assumed cultural identity that just simply isn't there, rather than evaluating the game on its own merits.
I saw it was only gonna run like 22 frames per second on my Steam Deck, so
does Avowed contain enough problems to truly warrant the divisive roasting it received in reviews? Let's just put these away for now and find out for ourselves if everyone is picking on Avowed for the wrong reasons.
We absolutely have to go inside and see for ourselves.
My name is Boss Sauce.
And I'm Roland Coons. And together, we are the two-headed hero.
Avowed takes place in the realm of Aora, which is the same setting as Obsidian's Pillars of Eternity games. Technically, Avowed would be the third game placed in this rich fantasy domain. Gameplay-wise, though, it's a massive departure. This game centers on the Living Lands, a fierce frontier island stricken by rebellion, natural hardships, and a mysterious disease known as the Dream Scourge. Players take on the role of the Imperial Envoy of Aedir, an industrious nation well within its colonizing phase. The Emperor of Aedir will stop at nothing to tame this wilderness, and there's only one person he entrusts with the task. The Pillars games are traditional crunchy CRPGs with party-based tactical combat, a focus on narrative choice, and a novel's worth of writing. In contrast, Avowed is an action RPG spin-off. Of course, this is far from the first time an action-adventure spin-off was unceremoniously flopped out from an established RPG series. For example, Bethesda already tried this way back in the 90s, and it didn't go great.
Let me show the well-crafted.
Fortunately, the industry learned enough about game development in the last 30 years to avoid some of the same pitfalls. Presumably. Right? After waiting for shaders to load for a good 3.5 minutes, we're blasted in the face with incredibly loud Obsidian logo render. Then we're finally able to slap that new game button, presented with a nicely drawn motion graphic that sets the stage, and sit down at the start of an in-depth character generator.
I've been thinking a lot about slap UIs, you know, like for cats.
The Imperial Envoy of Aedir enjoys vast amounts of personal discretion, as well as a big old umbrella of diplomatic immunity.
You can see that the poor bard...
You, what are you doing? This is a crime scene! That's evidence.
So it's a pretty powerful position, even though the rest of the world can't agree on how it's pronounced.
And you must be our Imperial Envoy.
The Imperial Envoy.
Ah, fuck, I dropped my phone in the toilet.
How did you land this illustrious job? Well, by being born with a salad for a face. You've been marked as a godlike, a being with special powers that takes on the resemblance of a patron god. They're often revered, or reviled, by the rest of the world due to their ability to summon a tiny fingerful of their patron god's power, and the common folk are usually not too afraid to let you know how they feel about it.
You mean a god gave you that face?
However, the Emperor looks at your dubious parentage as a natural advantage.
I got really jealous about how the character generator lets you put mushrooms all over your face, and I tried to recreate that with Dragon's Dogma 2, but the best I could get is making a really tiny-headed kitty guy.
Here in the character generator, you'll find a wide variety of mutations to represent your avatar, or turn them off completely. As you might know from our other videos, I love being able to create a custom adventure clown whenever possible, and every combination I tried was hilarious. So this is great, no notes. Unfortunately, this is where the complexity ends. Other than choosing a background and sliding around a couple basic stat points, all characters basically start the game on equal footing. Oh yeah, there's a pronouns toggle. That probably explains why half of these reviews here are screaming about the woke mind virus, or whatever. Said it before and we'll say it again though. More role-playing options are never a bad thing.
There's a bunch of oligarchs trying to make you mad about the wrong thing. Get in the comments and let us know how dumb you are.
After creating a kombucha mushroom person, the game treats you to one of the goofiest CGI cutscenes that I've ever watched in my life. A cute little bug-eyed rainbow ferret goes looking for its breakfast, steps on an exploding mushroom and gets doinked out of a tree with all the comedic timing of a Pixar movie. Darkness falls and the adorable Furby rises from the dead in one of the grossest imaginable ways. Wait a sec. Is this the woke mind virus that I keep hearing about? Then the creature lets out a noise?
Oh, I know that.
Okay, humor me a moment. Let's take a second to imagine, in our minds, what kind of sound you think a freaky zombie mushroom creature would make.
You want me to try to make the sound?
Sure, yeah, sure. If that's the best way you can express it.
All right, here it is.
I kinda wish they would have gone with that. This is what we get instead. Dude, it makes a dinosaur noise.
They just went with like a sound bank thing. Even when it had like living healthy lungs, it couldn't have come up with that noise.
There's no way. That's the sound they went with. Strangled pig? So during this entire cutscene, the velvety voice of the Emperor is rattling off lore about the living lands, but I couldn't tell you if any of that was important because I was too distracted by the silly cartoon. Maybe something about a vow? So yeah, we're avowed now. The image of a majestic ship leaves port, cut to that same ship being exploded by cannon fire, and our fancy little fungus boy washes up on an idyllic tropical beach.
Does it do the thing where like your character is placed into all the cutscenes? Because that's really my favorite part.
It sure does! Okay, this is maybe not the most inspiring or cohesive beginning to an epic journey. At this point, you might be asking, does it get any better? And the answer is absolutely. Because after shaking the sand out of your pants, the first thing you'll do is strike up a conversation with a gremlin.
After shaking the shit out of your pants, more like it.
Look at him. His big floppy ears, his little purple uniform, his immaculately manicured beard braids, and when he opens up his squeak hole, out pops this adorable accent.
I wasn't about to let the Emperor's envoy die on my watch.
Yeah, this is great. So, okay, Avowed, you got my attention. I'm all geared up to start my buddy adventure tale with my fuzzy blue sidekick. Alright, during this conversation you'll see a lot of skill check options sprinkled into the dialogue. Seems exciting on the surface, it looks like there's a lot of different ways to roleplay. There's no social skills in Avowed, all your checks are made against your base stats, so a perceptive hero might have a perception option, a dexterous hero might have a dexterosity option, and so on. Your chosen background might open up a few new choices as well, but do these dialogue checks really matter? We'll get to that later, because right now, Garrick is squeaking that the only chance to get off the island lies somewhere within the fortress that blew your ship into toothpicks.
What's a dexterous option for dialogue? Like, give him a wet willy?
Give him the wiggly fingers.
What's give him the wiggly fingers?
Pick up that nearby axe out of the wreckage and get ready to chop your way through a bunch of wooden trash walls and like 20,000 dinosaur people, because much of the Avowed experience lies within its combat. This is the point where most of the reviews just started screaming Skyrim at the top of their lungs, but it's really not much of a comparison. After getting used to the moment-to-moment stamina management, guard-breaking executions, and hopping around like a dingus, it's clear that Avowed aims to be more Souls-inspired than Skyrim-esque, but it ends up somewhere in the lands between. Battles here are more punchy and responsive than the clunky weapon bashing of Bethesda fame, but it's not punishing enough to be sweaty, nor complex enough to be strategic. Even so, it has that pleasant bubble wrap popping quality that lets you turn off your brain as your fingers take over. Monster variety also seems a little light. Even though there's a number of abominations to chop down, you'll find the same ones popping back up throughout the game. You're gonna bump heads with the spooky, scary skeleton brigade, hungry bandit support groups, and vicious dinosaur men time and time again. And of course, spiders. We really gotta fight spiders, again, in a role-playing game? Come on. There's bosses aplenty, but most bosses get a repeat later in the game. Plus, nearly all of these boss fights seem to take place in small flat arenas. With the big emphasis the game places on mobility, why not include some parkour areas within the boss fights as well?
I love when a game gives me an arachnophobia option but sometimes the game basically just like, oh, well, here's like a happy face with spider legs. That's not gonna do it, man. You gotta take those spiders all the way out of the game.
Several other reviews complained that there were too many bears. Maybe this was an issue in a press build or something, but honestly, I didn't see it. Outside the first act, bear levels were fairly nominal, I guess. Outside of a certain story area, they'd only be tossed in occasionally to serve as some tanky opponent within a larger group of mobs. This complaint probably comes from reviewers that didn't bother to play beyond the first few hours or so. And hey, the bears are still super funny when they do this Tekken combo on your ass.
What was the name of the bear character from Tekken? I'm gonna Google that real quick. Oh shit. That's right, my phone's in the toilet.
Avowed pulls a subtle move that I really appreciated when it comes to encounter design. It's the lack of level scaling. This is one of the only features that felt truly old school. When devs hand-tune the enemy placement and difficulty, the game world is more cohesive as a result. You're gonna find some challenges your character can't meet until gathering some strength. Obsidian learned this lesson way back in the New Vegas days with that quarry full of deathclaws just outside the starting town. Since enemies don't scale to player level, sneaking or fighting through a tough area full of high-level baddies feels pretty satisfying. A clever player can still push through with the right skills and maneuvering and find some decent rewards in return.
I've been playing Dragon's Dogma 2 on casual. Still, there's like an ogre will drop down from a cave ceiling and pick me up and smash me against a rock until I die.
Encounters usually have a pretty good mix of tough monsters, weaker swarm trash, and specialty casters that keep you guessing. Enemies and loot both shared a colored tier system, like an MMORPG. At first, this might make it seem easier to gauge the toughness of that big gang of pirates down the hill at a single glance. If you're wearing a bunch of tier 1 gear, those tier 2 enemies are going to be tough. But in direct conflict with these design choices, the game often spawns in a bunch of additional surprise monsters in the middle of a fight. This means you might find yourself suddenly up against like 20 skeletons instead of 2, which makes the bare-bones stealth system seem even more pointless.
I love a big gang of pirates, and you know, the new Yakuza like dragon pirate in Hawaii, that was a contender. But I decided to drive to a physical store in the year of our Lord 2025 and purchase Dragon's Dogma 2 for the PlayStation 5. I just needed...
The first superpower your godlike gets is a backstab move, which lets you hide in specific patches of grass and poke unsavory monsters in the bum with a rainbow spike. Monsters can easily spot you out in the open, so crouching in the grass is basically the beginning and the end of the game's attempt at a stealth system. Disappointed! And there's no crime system at all.
Dragon's Dogma 2 doesn't have a crime system either. I can just go into whoever's house and just rifle through it, even if they're right in there and they don't even say anything.
Okay.
Is it because I'm the... Am I the Avowed, or I'm the Avowed?
You're Avowed.
Wait,
you're Avowed.
I'm the Avowed.
You're the Avowed. So, this kind of makes sense through the lens of the game's lore. Since you're the Emperor's favorite lackey, you can kind of just take anything you find laying around, even inside people's houses, because who's gonna stop you? And as a peacekeeping agent of Adir, you can't go around just backstabbing the townsfolk. Locks are opened if you have enough picks to spend, no minigame or skill checks required. And everyone's pockets in the living lands will remain sadly unpicked.
Even if you employ the wiggle fingers?
Even if you employ the wiggly fingers. This is likely the major sticking point for everyone that goes into Avowed expecting another Skyrim. If you need a kleptomania simulator with criminal consequences, you're not going to find it here.
It's really fun to take all the stuff in someone's house and then like put it in your house. In a simulation, that is.
I absolutely agree with that. And the thing is, this isn't meant to be that.
It takes so long to make a Skyrim, and the Skyrim that everybody was waiting on turned out to be bad.
Yeah.
And now everybody's still really horny for a new Skyrim.
So now you stab that Geico lizard in the back and all his buddies are pissed. How does the fighting actually feel? Well, it's got some decent punch even if it's not overly complicated. Melee combat is pretty straightforward. You get a basic combo, a block, and a power attack. Avowed throws a couple twists into the formula by adding parkour jumps, a lateral dodge move, and a quick-filling stamina bar. Later on, warrior skills and parries can be unlocked to give close combat a little more juice.
What if somebody opened up a bar called a stamina bar? That's gotta be a thing, right?
Ranged combat is equally simple. Marksman weapons are easy enough to point and fire, and holding your aim makes these little critical hit targets appear. A successful hit adds extra damage. Nailing them can be tricky due to arrow drop, but there's some generous aim assist. And if bending a bow still isn't doing it for you, then there's always gunpowder. Since Avowed takes place during a sort of magical age of sail period, muskets, bombs, and flintlocks are on the menu. Firearms have a hearty snap to them and lack the drop-off of a flying arrow, but this advantage is offset by a longer reload period. Ammunition is never a problem though, because it's unlimited. Kinda feels like a strange arcadey design choice for an RPG. You can also quickly spam grenades to knock over groups of enemies, another fun yet questionable tactic. Special grenades with elemental effects are found in every corner of the living lands, just growing on trees or hanging off of rocks like deadly barnacles. And while they have their uses in battle, they can also open up new possibilities while exploring. You can blow open some shoddy masonry to clear a path, burn away pesky vegetation, or even freeze water to create a stepping stone. The real fun lies in the magic system. Picking up one of these arcane tones allows you to wield true elemental power, which can be anything from lightning bolts to arcane explosions to ice storms. In another callback to the Souls series, elemental effects kick in after hitting a target's threshold. Some of these are variations on damage over time, but others have some different effects. Frost buildup allows an enemy to shatter when hit with a strong impact. Shock damage can stun a target faster, and so on. You can also arm a cute little Harry Potter stick in your other hand, of course.
Should we talk about what we should do for the next video? What was that magic wizard boy? The Harry Potter with the serial numbers filed off.
But I much preferred to use this trusty wand that only knows one spell. Bullet. Back to the task at hand. As you might recall, you're shipwrecked near an island fortress. With your fuzzy blue buddy by your side, you traverse the dangerous hillsides and waterfalls until finally slipping inside the castle's walls. A strange voice resonating from a crystal growth recites slam poetry directly into your brain, and you find out what happened to the rest of the garrison forces from the sole survivor, a prisoner named Ilora. Something made the soldiers here go insane and tear each other apart. Could it be that pesky dream scourge plague we've been hearing so much about? Well, it's time to escape. The nearby port of Dawnshore is just one rickety rowboat ride away, but first, it's time to level up. A decent spread of warrior, ranger, and wizard abilities allow you to build your envoy as you see fit. Within these upgrade paths, there's all the expected bog standard skills like passive damage increases or health buffs, sure, but a few pegs lower down the tree, you get to the good stuff like being able to soccer tackle bad guys or turn invisible, or summon a giant gummy bear into battle. Once you find the spell book, you can spend a skill point at level up to learn a spell permanently, and journeyman wizards can even cast powered up versions of spells by investing more points. This entire system really does a great job at making you feel like a mage that's slowly cultivating their powers over the course of the game. And if you've ever made some bad choices or just want to try out something different, well, reskilling is just a couple coins away.
I feel like I've made some bad choices.
Look closely, and you'll notice a fourth tab here. Godlike powers. These abilities are a mix of passive and active skills that can be found tucked away in the field or slowly unlocked throughout the storyline depending on certain choices. Godlike powers bolster your resource pools, but they can also add special game changers to your toolbox like a resurrection spell, a deadly bolt of rainbow magic, and so on. Since your envoy carries around the invisible backpack of godlike privilege, you also get a second chance the instant your health hits 0, at which point you perform a Goku comeback so that you can finish the fight or make your escape. This also seems like a weird safety net to give to the player, considering you can simply save scum at any time. But I guess it makes some sort of thematic sense. Outside of wizard tomes, skills are gated only by your character level. This has a major drawback. For the first dozen hours or so, your combat techniques are not going to change that much, which can make many of the game's battles feel a bit stale in the beginning. But by the time you hit the midway point, you'll be able to pull off some crazy combos as you flow between weapon attacks, character skills, godlike powers, and companion abilities. So let's talk about companions for a minute.
Let's talk about why it's best not to have them when you're trapped inside a bathroom stall.
In Avowed, there's basically 4 companions: a fishman pirate, a dwarven survivalist, a token healer, and a really horny Pokemon.
Yaxley, Wizard extraordinaire, godless expert, and a Balrog in the bedroom.
Ah, God, why?
I wonder which one of the original 150 Pokemon has the highest horniness stat. Gengar?
If you decide to befriend your buddies in conversations and complete their little side quests, this pays off later with a significant buff to your stats. They also chatter around the campfire with each other during the downtime, which gives a little more insight into their personal interests and quirks.
Sweat and midday breezes don't count as washing, you know.
Right, so I smell like the wilderness. You people stand out like a tree rat in heat.
That's a nice touch. In combat, companions have their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as abilities governed by their own skill tree, which makes your adventuring party feel like an extension of your character build. Each one also has a utility skill, like dispelling illusions or activating cheater vision to highlight all the items in an area.
Hey, what's going on back there?
Companion AI isn't, well, it isn't great. And they're quite chatty. To be fair, it is really cool to hear your buddies telling you to watch your six in the middle of a big hairy battle, but your party members also have this obnoxious tendency to babysit you through all the game's traps and puzzles, shouting stuff like, "Oh, look out for that tripwire," or "Hey, I bet that key you found works on that door over there," because why let players feel rewarded for figuring anything out themselves?
Ah, I found my phone. It was in the second hole.
Companion abilities and skills are activated using a ring menu that slows down time, a la Mass Effect. All of your other abilities that aren't assigned to the hot slots on the D-pad also end up here. This works fine in the game's opening hours, but as the Envoy and crew grow in strength, these rings get bogged down more and more and more with new sub-menus and categories. This suddenly turns the combat into more of a real-time with pause system once you get into the game's second half.
Hey, could you pass me that big bucket of rice?
Maybe this brings Avowed more in line with its Pillars of Eternity predecessors, but it also grinds the action to a halt as you slowly tab through menu pages, pick out the appropriate superpower, drag the ring around until your target is highlighted, and press activate. On the other hand, once you master this, the system allows you to perform some pretty badass combos in the late game, like and that's pretty damn cool. After your narrow escape from an island full of crazy lizard men and talking crystals, you'll finally find yourself at the docks of Dawnshore, just outside the colony city of Paradise. Garrick decides it's time to part ways here. Ilora too, if you decided to spring her from jail. So we lose our fuzzy blue buddy. Aww. But we gain a scaly new buddy! This is Kai, the mercenary from Rawatai, and I thought my ears were playing tricks on me here until I looked it up. Is that...
Can it wait for a bit? I'm in the middle of some calibrations.
Yep, it sure is.
You'd be surprised what you notice in a moment like that.
Kai is voiced by Brandon Keener. The guy who played Garrus Vicarian in the Mass Effect games basically reprises the same role here as your main tank. Kai and Sinric, the captain of the Paradise Militia, are busy waggling chins at each other as you stumble out of your rickety rowboat.
Your face, it's so...
You're doing great.
Apparently things have gone a bit off in Dawnshore. The Adiran ambassador and the city's claviger have gone missing. What the hell's a claviger?
Well, the internet says it's either a guy with a club or a key holder. So either the city of Paradise elects a guy to hold a baseball bat, or he's the equivalent of the sad dude at the CVS that has to unlock the glass cabinets so that you can get to that sweet, sweet Sudafed.
Also, a bunch of armored fanatics called the Steel Garrote have moved in to help liberate the living lands on behalf of Adir, and they may or may not have gone rogue. Oh yeah, and everything alive seems to be slowly turning into insane cordyceps creatures. Armed with this extensive laundry list of stuff to worry about later, we now step forth into the open world of the living lands and get to work at scrubbing off all that nasty dream scourge. How will the Envoy navigate this hostile realm? Surely you'd be given the Emperor's fastest steed or a nice cozy carriage, right? Nah. Better make sure those boots fit properly because you'll be traveling the living lands one step at a time. Honestly, this would bother me more if the foot travel wasn't so much fun. It's entirely possible to boost your running and parkour speeds to boomer shooter levels by using the right stat builds and item combinations.
Do you want one of these? I brought these in with us in case we get thirsty.
Sure, I could use a sip. A big mess of map waypoints and camps work as the game's fast travel system, which keeps backtracking fairly painless, although the option to set your own waypoint would have been really welcome. But you'll probably use these tools far less than you might think because exploration forms the foundation of the game. There's a wealth of gorgeous hills, gentle rivers, and beautiful vistas to trudge through, and just as many dungeons filled with deadly and hilarious traps.
I was just thinking about other hilarious traps, and I think maybe an all-timer is the little like laundry basket in the game Mousetrap that never stays on the stick.
Oh, that's a good one. I like Big Boulder that rolls after you. That's one of my favorites. These regions have a surprising amount of verticality. You'll run into a large number of platforming sections and Ubisoft-style tower climbing wherever you see some of these conspicuous ropes, which are basically the game's equivalent to yellow paint. But if you see a big lighthouse in the distance, or a neat little cave just out of reach, there's usually a way to hoist yourself up there. I'm always about a game that rewards you for poking around in its remote corners, and Avowed is absolutely this type of game. I also appreciated the game's attempts to take dungeon looting to the next level. Earlier, I noted that Avowed contains a bunch of neat little environmental interactions, and it often uses these to form simple puzzles. It's pretty satisfying to chuck a blue grapefruit into the water to make an ice platform you can jump on, or shoot a lightning bolt at an ancient piece of machinery in order to power up that mechanical door and scoop up all the loot inside with your grubby little wiggly fingers.
You gotta give him the wiggly fingers.
Furthermore, many of the bigger treasure hunts have little to no hand-holding at all. There's loads of secret passages, hidden buttons, and tempting waterfalls that hide helpful resources and special artifacts. Rare maps point the way to forgotten artifacts. Elusive riddle scrolls become scavenger hunts for pieces of lost god totems, which can then be reassembled in your camp to provide massive stat bonuses, or even alter the mechanics of your overall playstyle. It's such a good payoff. Is all this loot even worthwhile though? Well, it depends. Avowed uses a tiered loot system familiar enough to anyone that's played an MMO or a Borderlands game in the last couple decades. There's also some unique quality items that have special properties. These pieces are extremely powerful and it's pretty effective to build an entire playstyle around them. It's also possible to strengthen their enchantments to further change and enhance their unique qualities. After joining up with Kai and setting out from the docks on your quest to get back the city's politicians, we finally get a quiet moment at camp. This is where we can learn about the game's crafting systems, which are, well, they're here. Weapons and armor can all be upgraded at camp, provided you gather up the proper materials, and materials can be further refined into a higher quality the same way. Unused items can be scrapped into crafting goods for further upgrades, or simply sold off to a merchant when you're short of skeets. Yeah, the currency of the living lands is called skeets. Don't they know what that means in American? This goes for the unique quality gear as well, which breaks down into the special components needed to get your favorite weapons to the next tier. So why is any of this important? Well, it means it's possible to stick with your favorite weapons and armor throughout the entire campaign, if that's what you want. But the drawback here is you don't often feel as excited to stumble across that shiny new sword, knowing that it's probably just going to get dumpstered into whatever sticks and rocks you need to give your favorite shirt an incremental boost. Cooking is the only other crafting system in the game, and well, there's not much to tell. Like the crafting bench, it's just menus. Food items provide a ton of useful buffs for both your attack and defense, and it's absolutely crazy that the game allows you to stop a fight to chow down on a dozen bowls of stew, Skyrim style. There's not really any recipe discovery or experimentation to speak of. What makes inventory management even weirder is the lack of an item weight for anything except weapons and armor. Basically, this means that carrying around 100 mugs of grog is effortless for the envoy, as if there's some sort of superpowered cocktail waiter. But if you want to lug around 7 or 8 spears, you'll be over encumbered. Weapons and armor can all be broken down in the field or teleported right into your stash out of your backpack. But since food, potions, and accessories don't weigh anything, it won't take long before your inventory gets bogged down with all sorts of random junk that you aren't currently using. Kinda makes you wonder, what's the point in having a weight limit in the first place? Despite the lackluster loot and crafting, there is one saving grace. You can glamour your outfits to look like anything else you've previously picked up in the game, which is great because, well, I found a clown costume. And now I don't need to wear anything else for the entire game.
Know what the worst part of a clown costume in a public restroom is? Trying to unzip while wearing those big white gloves.
I always thought the worst part was when your seltzer gun accidentally goes off right after you use the hand dryer.
I'm trying to think of another clown thing.
About being in a bathroom as a clown.
No, one more beat.
Know what the worst part about a clown costume in a public restroom is? The tiny bicycle.
Yeah. Damn.
Avowed carries a much brighter tone than the marketing might have led us to believe. It's less Lord of the Rings and more psychedelic Smurf fantasy. I can get behind that. We've seen a lot of the grimdark Peter Jackson-inspired stuff over the last 20 years of video games, and it's nice to see such a stunning use of color and lighting here. What we have instead is a variety of rich biomes, all dotted with the overgrown ruins of a long-dead civilization. Weird little rainbow lemurs and piggies graze away in the fields. There's beautiful beaches, vibrant vistas, glowing mushroom caves, bubbling lakes of lava. The living lands really look alive.
Yeah, wow. I mean, they spent so much time making a unique world and then they put fucking spiders in it.
Unfortunately, looks aren't everything. Environments feel fairly static since there's not much in the way of physics objects to interact with. Every barrier and point of interest that you can interact with has a polite little marker hovering over it that tells you exactly what power or element to use. Certain boards can be broken down with ease, while others deflect your strikes completely. These limitations feel fine enough within the confines of the game's dungeons, but within the towns, it just makes them feel like bigger, less lethal dungeons instead of the bustling cities they're meant to portray. Considering how immersive the first-person animations are, it's kind of a shame that the environments don't follow suit. There's tons of these flavor animations, even for little things like popping open a treasure chest or unlocking a door. It's rare to see a game include so much of this stuff without it feeling intrusive or sluggish. Character designs also feel a bit hit or miss from one moment to the next.
I take it you're new to these parts?
The dinosaur people are a pretty cool enemy type with lots of different flavors. And I really love the big mushroom men, as well as some of the other nature monsters. But alongside these, we get batches of enemies that feel kinda uninspired, like palette-swapped ghosts, or palette-swapped beetles, or palette-swapped spiders. Friggin' spiders, man. Am I right? With all these monsters around, it would also be nice to see more wear and tear in the living lands, because almost everyone's outfits look like they were polished that morning. Maybe having weary-looking guards with tarnished armor, hunters wearing bloodied patchwork animal skins, farmers with muddied boots, and so forth would go a long way to reflect the struggles that these pioneers face in their day-to-day. There's also some just uncomfortable speech animations that sort of look like people's tongues are trying to escape from their faces. What's going on in your mouth there, Kai? Are you jaw wrestling with a flatworm again? Audio is overall pretty spot on. There's some helpful cues like the whoosh of a charged up power attack or the tinkly shimmer of a nearby treasure chest. Impacts, musket shots, and the clash of steel on steel all sound just fine, but I can't help feeling I've heard a lot of these sound effects in other games before.
I think that lemur's sound effect was in Jurassic Park.
The soundtrack, though, is impressive. Avowed has a top-notch orchestral-sounding score, dynamic, full, and original while still remaining firmly in its fantasy roots. Amazingly enough, it was created entirely by one producer in his spare bedroom. And if you want to see the story about how this came together, well, the guy's a fairly well-known YouTube musician. If you're curious, his rundown on the musical journey will be linked in the description. Voice work is where we start to run into some friction. Lines will occasionally vary in quality as if they were recorded in different studios. All the acting is fairly well done, but there's some conversations that have unnatural moments of hesitation when several characters are talking in groups. Obsidian brought in a lot of experienced heavy hitters as far as the voice cast goes.
Can it wait for a bit? I'm in the middle of some calibrations.
The ubiquitous Matthew Mercer even makes an appearance.
Age has made me slow. I tire easily. I sleep now more hours than I wake.
But there's one thing even the best voice actors can't fix. A shaky script.
Asshole! You show your face now?
Now?
I hate to use the tired saying, the game doesn't get good until X number of hours in, but the story of Avowed really does get better after the game's opening hours. Unfortunately, it feels like two completely different teams wrote this thing.
The fuck?
The A team must have been in charge of all the world-shaking, morally gray decisions that the game thrusts into your hands, all the compelling reincarnation backstories, and all the tense conversations with cosmic beings. This is absolutely my shit, and smacks of that top-tier Obsidian narrative writing we've all come to know and love over the years. These cool story elements will start rolling along, only to smack right into a brick wall of anemic jokes, Marvel movie jabbering, and eye-rolling innuendos from the writer's B team.
From stick to stone, using essence to augment male performance.
It's a neck-breaking tonal shift every time this knockoff James Gunn humor butts into what might otherwise be an impactful moment. Most of these moments are fairly front-loaded in the game, but if you can push past the occasional cringe, Avowed offers up an intriguing tale weaved within a unique world. The gods are known quantities that literally watch over mortals. They're watching us right now while we're in the bathroom stall, and their role is to carefully maintain the intricate cycle of reincarnation known as the Wheel. In recent years, however, the gods have turned their attentions away from Eora and have fallen into conflict with each other, causing chaos across the world as the wheel begins to wobble. Among these mortals, the powerful nation-state of Adir has arisen. Backed by Wodika, the burned queen and god of justice, Adir has its sights set on annexing the Living Lands, a resource-rich island frontier that's loosely governed by a coalition of settlers, traders, unconventional magicians, and leftover pirates. Placed in the role of both a godlike of a forgotten patron and a special envoy to the Emperor of Adir, it's up to the player to guide the Living Lands out of the grips of the Dream Scourge and into a new era of prosperity. Or ruin. Is it more than just a coincidence that your envoy, with their plant-like facial protrusions, is sent to a land suffering from a soul plague that causes mushrooms to blossom on the afflicted? And at the end of it all, where will your loyalties ultimately lie? With the free frontier kingdoms of the Living Lands, or with the powerful colonizing forces of the Adiran Empire?
Man, I love some mushrooms. If I had mushrooms growing out of my body, would it be weird? Could I still just shave some of those bastards off and make myself a...
I feel like that'd be like eating a booger.
Would it though? I don't know.
It's like coming off of your body and you eat it like a toenail. Quest and dialogue design is one of those things I wish I could give a side thumb to. Throughout the game, you'll see many skill checks pop up with tons of decisions. Some of these are non-decisions that only impact a couple dialogue lines. Others are micro decisions that might have a minor effect on a quest. And then there's the macro decisions, the choices that will actually influence the ending. These tend to be fairly obvious, bracketed in boss fights or big verbal warnings from your companions. While it does seem like there's a couple long stretches of linearity in the midsection, the payoff during the game's ending chapters is absolutely worth it. Careful attention was made to bring everything full circle, and conversations from the game's first hours can cast a shadow on the final fate of the Living Lands.
Oh, hey, I finally found the number for the maintenance guy for this restroom.
I guess my main gripe here is that, unlike other Obsidian games, there's not many opportunities to settle things without violence, whether it's poking around an environment for an additional clue or cleverly talking your way around a situation. The coveted hidden third paths for these binary choices don't usually exist. And what's more, the role-playing options on offer sometimes read more like a 4chan thread. No, I don't really want my character to slash emote cross my arms. The hell's this? Must have been the B team's day to use the writing computer again.
I got the maintenance person on the phone, but they hung up when you said 4chan.
Then, and I can't believe I have to say this, there's the wokeness argument. At this point, woke doesn't mean anything, it's just shorthand for anything that makes a conservative uncomfortable. I'm sick of all these paper tiger reviews that are just out to farm clicks with manufactured rage bait. What even makes this game fit that description? An optional pronoun toggle? A few women that enjoy positions of power without having to wear titty armor? Geez, I mean, narratively, you start out as the Emperor's super cop, putting down violent plague victims, and making big decisions whether or not to subjugate small, self-sufficient societies. Doesn't get much more bootlicker than that. And if you'd rather take the story on a colonizing route, instead of its arguably more interesting and nuanced path, well, that's an option too. That's called role-playing. Maybe give it a try. or give it a rest. Of course, this doesn't mean Avowed is beyond reproach. We've already touched on the awkward facial animations and idiotic companion AI, but the game can be a bit undercooked in other places. Player physics would occasionally go boing when trying to parkour things that shan't be parkoured, which is funny. For some reason, the physics in the inventory screen would also get a little weird. The hell's going on with my map cursor here? Makes it tough to fast travel, that's for sure. Other issues poke their heads up from time to time. Jittery wildlife, Marius getting stuck in a door, floating dinosaur men. Yeah, you don't have to look hard to find a little bit of jank. But Avowed tossed me an Unreal Engine crash every few hours, so I'm sure that some poor coder is going to be coming in with the Flex Seal to patch that memory leak. Honestly, since Avowed supplies us with a good autosave feature and the near limitless power of the save scum, the thing that made this truly irritating was how long I had to wait for shaders to load before the main menu. A load screen before a load screen before a load screen.
The load screen is all the way down. The entire world rests upon the back of a load screen.
But whatever, this is AAA gaming. Can't expect perfection at this price point. I joke, of course, on the big Obsidian scale of jank, with Pentiment being pristine and, what's all the way down here? Let's see. Dungeon Siege 3. Anyways, this one rates a couple pegs below Outer Worlds. In the end, I don't know if I was entirely wowed by Avowed, at least not at first, but I have to admit the longer I stuck with it, the more I found myself getting sucked into the punchy combat loop and really enjoying the twisting tale that it wove. That old RPG magic from Obsidian eventually shone through after the murky clouds of the game's opening hours finally began to part. I think eventually once the temperature dies down, RPG fans will look back at Avowed with much more kindness than they do now. Once you get past its initial shortcomings, it's a really good time for anyone that's looking to hop around a massive fantasy land while dropping fiery meteors on a skeleton's face.
If you've gotten this far in the video, thanks for sticking around as we climbed the cracks and crevices of the living lands. This one was a long time in the making. Almost felt like I got turned into a skeleton wizard myself for a bit there, if you know what I mean. But anyways, what did you think of Avowed? Has Obsidian passed their prime as an RPG studio, or are they better than ever?
Garlowain's gonads.
Let us know what you think down in the scribble area.
And if you like what we're doing here, maybe spend a couple doubloons over on our Patreon to get access to all of our videos early, uncut, and ad-free. Support us at a higher level to get an official shout-out like these lovely heroes.
Wolfgang Bristol,
Adam Uselman,
Jaduzable,
Yaroslav Rybaki,
Whoopes,
and all the rest. Thanks for keeping us going during these trying times.
You do spoil me.
You can also help us out by subscribing and hitting all those YouTube buttons and notifications to make sure you catch us on our next journey.
Try out the new slap-based UI that we've installed.
It's got physics.
Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next Two-Headed Hero. Okay, looks like you got that out of your system. Can I info dump about one of the games that I've been playing now?
I mean, yeah, go for it. My legs are totally numb at this point. When's that maintenance guy gonna get here?
Oh, they don't work on the weekends.